As a society, we need to communicate. It's the only way of passing information from one person to another. Throughout this video, we'll go over the various ways of communicating with others, how to engage in conversations, what to do when you need to send an email. As with many aspects of etiquette, there are formal and informal ways of sending communication depending on the context and the information that needs to be passed along. First, let's talk about navigating small talk. I know that one form of communicating that many people often struggle or have challenges with is with small talk or at social events with strangers that they haven't even met before. Think about the last time that you had an unexpected communication or conversation with someone and learned that you love the same book or you love the same television show. It bonded you and created the first signs of friendship and communication. Being in an unknown setting is already strange enough, but what happens if you actually have to talk to other people in that situation, in that setting, instead of standing alone in some far off, dark corner? I know most people find it difficult to suddenly start up a conversation with a complete stranger. Here's a tip. Instead of putting so much pressure on yourself about what to talk about, trying to find things to talk about, why not just approach the situation in much the same way that you would approach a conversation with a friend? Or even just approach the situation in much the same way that you would a person that you know. When you approach it that way, it's a bit more basic, right? One of you says something and then the other person responds or adds more to the conversation. This allows you to then add more to the conversation, giving more input, or even just turn the conversation in a new direction. I mean, you talk to your friends and family all the time. What's so challenging about talking to a stranger? So, what are some things that we can do to make small talk a little less painful? Body language. You can tell a whole lot about a conversation just by the body language. Is the person you're talking with giving you undivided attention? Are they making eye contact with you? Are they smiling at you? These are all clues that we use as part of body language. I mean, you don't need to engage in a staring contest to be seen as having effective body language and communication, but you probably should make it a point to make eye contact every now and then. One way to take the pressure off of you when you're having communication with someone is simply to mirror their body language. Are they looking at you and then veering off to the side? Well, why not do the same thing? Smiling is another aspect of body language that plays a major role in communication. Nobody wants to approach someone with a scowl on their face. Friendly, relaxed body language makes it easier for you to approach people and for people to approach you. Now, think about your tone of voice. Much like body language, the tone of your voice says a lot during a communication. Actually, some people might even argue that the tone of your voice brings a lot more to the conversation than the words themselves. Okay, maybe you're pretty comfortable with how your tone of voice comes off in a face-to-face conversation, but how does your tone of voice sound in a phone conversation? Try this. Try saying, "How are you doing?" with a smile on your face, and then try it again with no smile on your face. How are you doing? How are you doing? How are you doing? How are you doing? Do you notice that there are both physical and tonal differences in both methods of asking, "How are you doing?" Yeah. Communication is used when we need to warn people about danger or when we need to share education. There's really no way to integrate into society without communication, whether it's face-to-face communication or communication through sending notes or stationery, or even a more modern form of communications such as sending a text message or email. There are so many ways to do it effectively and properly. Communication is as much about knowing how to act as it is about actually speaking. You have to understand what to say when you're around others. For example, how you talk with your best friend is probably going to be very different from how you talk with your boss. In the case of talking with your boss, you're probably going to be using very industry specific technology because you know that your boss has the wherewithal and the context to know what it is that you're talking about. But you probably wouldn't use the same tone of voice or the same communication style when you're just talking with a guest at maybe a wedding reception. That's not how you would just strike up conversation in a scenario or context like a wedding reception. Proper etiquette dictates that you try to make those around you comfortable. You don't strike up a conversation using all words and terminology that person wouldn't understand. Another culprit of conversation is using too many verbal tics like so, like. Those are very distracting. You want to do your best and try and cut those verbal tics out of your vocabulary altogether. Now, how about proper communication on the internet and other social media? Social media in these current days and times makes it a lot easier to be more comfortable and relaxed in your communication. But it's still important to have elegance and grace in your communication. Whether you're sending emails professionally or in your personal life, it's still important to be appropriate with your communication. And you still need to make an effective choice when matching your tone to the communication. In an email, depending on who you're sending the message to, your tone may change. Your language may also vary. Whoever the recipient is or whoever you're sending the email to should also impact the way that you address the recipient and the body and the language that's used in your email. You'll start the email with "Dear" followed by the title of the person whom you are addressing. If you're sending the email to a friend or a colleague, you can more easily be comfortable addressing the email with the person's first name. Assume that everyone will be on a first name basis with you, especially not if this email is the first means of communication that you're having with each other. While there is proper etiquette for sending emails, there are also proper etiquette tips for receiving the emails and what to do once that email hits your message box. Some emails can be responded to pretty quickly, but then there are also those other emails that might take you a little bit more time to respond. So what do? Do you just receive the email and not say anything if it's that circumstance where it's going to take a longer time to respond? No, you should still inform the recipient that you've received the email and let them know that you're going to be taking the time that it takes to provide them with a proper response. That way they're not left wondering whether or not you received the message, and it also indicates to them that you respect them enough that you're going to take the proper time and energy that it takes to respond in an effective way. Now with text messages are even shorter. With all the rapid back and forth of the messages in a text message, it's easy to miss the typical cues that you would pick up on in a face-to-face communication. You can especially miss out on the body language and on the tone of voice. Proper etiquette with sending text messages includes knowing the recipient. Are they the type of person who's always on their phone? Do they always have their phone on their person? Or do they generally avoid doing anything on their phone except making phone calls? Their phone habits will let you know if you should even send them a text message or if you're better off just calling. Also, if you find that your text message is just way too long, or if the response will be a lengthy one, that's another indicator that you're probably better off just picking up the phone and calling. Finally, there's a time and a place to be texting, and a time and a place in which texting is acceptable or not. For instance, in a movie theater, the blue light coming from your phone screen could be distracting. Or even driving. You never want to engage in texting while driving. No matter how you communicate, it's always important to consider your needs and your surroundings. Etiquette also has a lot to do with your own personal preferences and your own personal choices. How do you want your communication to reflect on you? Whether you're text messaging or engaging in small talk, consideration is one of the foundations of etiquette. So, communication is about using the right words. The way you speak or even the way you send messages highlights your personality.